start by welcoming you and saying a couple of quick thank yous to some of our supporters of this event, as well as some of the folks who were involved in the planning of the event. So just to extend a thank you to our sponsors, we'd like to extend thanks to the Ed Zagorski Visitors Fund for its commitment in supporting design, education, and career development. A portion of this event is also funded by alumna Gretchen Scheidel, a BFA Industrial Design alum of 1991, Buzzco, and the Industrial Design Fund. And so these were the generous supporters of this event and what make it possible. I'd also like to once again extend a thank you, whether you are a student, staff member, faculty member, employer, professional, alum. Thank you for being here. And I'd also like to extend thank you to the Siebel Center for Design for hosting and giving us the space to do this event, as well as the committee that was involved in planning the event. So without further ado, welcome again. I'd like to welcome the Dean of the College of Fine and Applied Arts, Jake Pinholster, to introduce our keynote speakers.
Thank you so much, Joey. Good morning, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to welcome you all to this 2025 Design Illinois. It's such an extraordinary group. I mean, I just love seeing students and faculty and employers and alumni mixing together. This is the type of thing we don't do enough of, and it can be so transformative to the lives and careers of the students in particular. I'm in my first 6 months of serving as Dean of the College of Fine and Applied Arts. And this has been a really, truly eye-opening experience for me. The community here is incredible. There's a lot of great collaboration going on. There's a lot of lovely sort of welcoming attitude, and I hope you all feel that today more than ever. I would like to echo Joey in extending a heartfelt thanks to all of our alumni for coming back and participating in this. There's nothing more important that you can do for this university than support the students who are following in your footsteps. And I really appreciate the time you are spending with us today in order to do that. And I hope honestly that you're getting some not only good future colleagues out of it, but you're also making great connections among yourselves, because we want to make sure to continue supporting your careers as well. Similarly, thanks to all the employers and industry leaders who are here today, whether you're affiliated officially with the University of Illinois or not, or whether this is your first time with us or your 20th time with us, really grateful for your presence here, and we hope that you're heartened and impressed by the students that you're meeting today, because we think they're pretty great. And to those students, thrilled to have you here today, thrilled to have you engaging. I know this is a huge part, an incredibly busy part of your semester. This is like this last couple of weeks in the spring, a couple of months in the spring, higher education has like this pathological obsession with shoving everything it possibly can into March and April. So anytime you can carve out a full day for participation in events outside of your required classes, I think it shows how invested you are in your community and in your future careers, and that's really wonderful. Both for alums and students, please do take full advantage of the mentorship fair and the portfolio review. Don't just passively sit and watch and or kind of float around the edges. I know for many of you, and this goes for me as well, have introversion tendencies. This is a time to put yourself out there and to actively engage. Go introduce yourself to someone that you may not have met before, even if you don't have necessarily an in or a thing you definitely want to talk to them about. This is a time and a day where everyone will accept someone just randomly coming up to them and introducing themselves. So please make sure to do that and to be open to those ideas and opportunities. That is maybe the most defining feature of the difference between students that I've watched over my 20-something years in higher education. The difference between being truly successful in your early career is not whether you're talented or not, it's not whether you're hardworking or not, it's how engaged you are and how willing you are to reach out and make connections in the world around you. That doesn't necessarily mean schmoozing or being a really great networker. It can really just mean being willing to honestly and vulnerably engage with the people you meet. Finally, thank you again, to echo Joey, to all the staff in the FAA Academic Affairs Office and Career Services and the Siebel Center who made this possible today. It's a ton of work to put on an event this size, and I think we underestimate that a lot, so please give your thanks to Anna and the crew and Rachel as you see them throughout the day. Finally, and most importantly, it is now my pleasure to introduce your keynote speakers, Kevin and Jeanine Flores. Kevin and Jeanine have been together and collaborated since meeting as design undergraduates at the University of Illinois here, and they both graduated with their BFAs in Industrial Design in 1993 and went on to co-found an agency in Silicon Valley in the 1990s. Highlights of their work were published in 2 books on interface design and recognized by industry awards. Before their career paths diverged, they worked as successful freelance designers on everything from brand and social media marketing to consumer hardware and mobile apps. Kevin acquired significant insights and experience on entrepreneurship through his involvement in multiple startup ventures. He then built and led product and design teams at Verizon, 23andMe, and LinkedIn. He co-authored more than 20 web and mobile technology patents, and he continues to serve as a consultant, mentor, and coach in the design community. Jeanine now applies her industry experience to bring relevant challenges to her students at Mission College in Santa Clara, California. She teaches graphic design theory, typography, page layout, and branding to inspire and prepare the next generation of designers, and she earned a Master's of Science degree in online education focusing on industrial design. We are so fortunate to have Kevin and Jeanine with us today as they recently co-authored a comprehensive, and I think you'll find super relevant book on Design Career Handbook, everything you need to know how to get a job, everything you know to get a job. Sorry, I'm gonna start this again because I want to get that right. Design Career Handbook, everything you need to know to get a job and be successful. Please join me in welcoming Jeanine Flores and Kevin Flores.
Good morning. Give us 1 second while we put our clicker to good use so we can be hands-free.
I'm not doing a magic trick. We really just thought we were prepared.
Close-up magic.
Boom. Did it work?
Yeah, okay. You can hold this one. No?
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. We'd also like to thank the Fine and Applied Arts Department, the Siebel Center for Design, Ed Zagorski Visitor Fund, Director Switsky, and everyone who supported us making it out today. I'm Kevin Flores.
And I'm Jeanine Flores. We met here, as the dean just told you, at the University of Illinois as undergrads in industrial design. Our studio mates have since dispersed around the country, and they do many different kinds of design right now. We'd like to share that what we've been up to since we moved to San Jose, California, also known as Silicon Valley or San Francisco Bay Area. And the fun fact that we've been working together for more than half of our careers. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give you a tour of what that was like. We'd like to give you a brief talk about what the current state of the job market is. And then we're going to jump into some practical advice for job searching.
We sounded so fancy in our intro.
Right.
So both of us had jobs briefly before and after moving to California, but we really consider the beginning of our careers, we call our 1.0 phase, when we created our first agency, Lightspeed Interactive. It was scary at the time, but there were a lot of agencies kicking off, especially in Silicon Valley. Tons of companies wanted in on all the new technologies. Here are a few artifacts that we dug up. These are interactive CD-ROMs that we developed. There were a lot of these plastic discs generated back in the day. One company alone sent out over 1 billion of them. Anybody know that company? AOL, somebody from the back room, some elder person, I'm sure. They weren't one of our clients, but so our projects range from product demos to marketing materials to corporate training. It was really great to be a designer back at the time in the 90s. There was an explosion of creativity. We were all developing and learning together. It might be hard to see back there, but any cyberpunk fans in the audience?
One.
A couple handfuls there. So these graphics, they're a bit cringe to look at now, but this was our first Lightspeed project. It was an interactive presentation for Novell, a company back then that made the leading network operating system. sounds kind of irrelevant today, and they don't even exist anymore. But this was among a few of our projects included in this book on interface design. Now, back here at U of I, we learned 3D modeling and some animation in the ID program, which we were able to build upon professionally. We actually developed a reputation for high-quality digital video, and we even had a blue screen soundstage at our studio.
A few years later, our work has appeared in the sequel to that previous book. And this spread shows you corporate training for Oracle, the database company that is still around. At this point, our 3D skills improved a lot, and because we'd mastered video compression, our video was more seamlessly integrated in these projects. And then the internet arrived.
Information superhighway.
Every business, no matter how large,
They feel that they have to get out of the playing field, so to speak.
But it's very hip to be on the internet right now.
So that was just a glimpse of what it was like. Fortunately, it wasn't that dramatic a shift for us. We were surrounded by technology, often beta testing software and hardware, and we were designing and coding to build interactive content.
All of that content creation that we did on the CDs just transitioned onto delivering websites. So everyone wanted to get on that hip internet. As a younger Bill Gates just said, it was the .com era. This is just a sampling of our clients. We served a broad range of industries, some big name companies and many startups.
It was smooth sailing for about 6 years. We grew to a team of around 30, and we were working with companies in technology, semiconductor, health, telecom, publishing, even the US Air Force. As you heard in our intro, our work appeared in a couple magazines and we won some awards. Then around 2000, we took on venture capital funding, and we transformed our service-based company into a software company. It started with the acquisition of a content management system, or CMS, from Xerox, you may have heard of them, that we evolved into a web publishing platform. Little humble brag, this was a few years before WordPress. So we essentially became an enterprise software company. We built up a nice customer base, but then this happened. The .com bubble burst. You know, we kind of saw it coming, which is why we revolved our company in the first place, but it did impact our business. So a little bit of a side note here. We were slightly ahead of the software as a service or SaaS business model, subscription, and you know that became a norm a few years later. And we were a handful of years before the mobile app era came in, which would have been a great fit for our team. So our company had swung completely to developing software away from creative work.
Well, this led to our 2.0 phase. We went back to hands-on design. We started over. We started consulting and we were freelancing as Flores Design Group. It was just the two of us, but then we added in some former colleagues that we subcontracted as we needed. We were lucky to leverage our network and also to retain some of our previous clients. And it also helped that we were working with new startups, and we were working with small local businesses, getting them online and helping produce their websites and getting them into social media. This is what some of that looked like.
There's a shrug emoji.
As Lightspeed Interactive, we had worked on over 100 projects. And then as FDG, maybe 100 more. We refer to this time as getting in a lot of design reps. This repetition is important in your early to mid career, especially when you're working on a wide variety of projects, which is how we developed very well-rounded skills. We were doing brand identity, graphics, animation, presentations, print, web design and development, and also social media marketing. It was maybe not our best work, but we delivered what our clients wanted. Looking back now, we consider ourselves digital pioneers, forging all of these new digital design skills with our peers on the job and out of necessity. Plus, we learned to work with different types of people, which is important, and how to effectively manage projects and navigate across different industries.
So let me take a minute to reflect on the transitional state of the industry at the time. I mentioned before that it was great to be a designer in the 90s, and it was. The goal was often to stand out both creatively and technically. Everything was scrappy and experimental. I didn't even mention flash animation. It was fun, but it was also kind of a free-for-all. Now, coming from industrial design, we had learned a design process, identifying problems, considering human factors and behaviors and motivations. We practiced a lot of prototyping. We did do most of that on the job, but around the mid-2000s, we celebrated the rise of design thinking. Thanks to firms like IDEO, shout out to Director Switzky, who spent a good chunk of her time there. Design thinking did bring a maturity of practice, and it was the key to, air quotes, digital transformation and innovation that companies were now hungry for. So, which was a great time for me as I was getting involved in a string of startups. So I'll just quickly share a few noteworthy ones. The first is, the coolest one was Dip Dive. This is my hashtag name drop moment. I led a team that built a content and social media network platform from the ground up for will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas. I'm not exaggerating when I say we had features that were like YouTube, Spotify, Flickr, Blogger, Twitter, Facebook, and even FaceTime. Now, I have many, many, many celebrity stories, but professionally, it was my first time working with highly experienced engineering architects. Then there was Pixpose, where I was the technical co-founder. This was a truly bootstrapped startup where we built a simple mobile app. Nothing consequential. Basically, we licensed photos directly from celebrities that users then could superimpose over their own photos. Someday I'll share my most critical business learned lesson about the time when my co-founder fled the country and what I had to do about it. So look out that in the future. I'm most proud of Literati. This was my friend's social good startup where I was a longtime consultant. This was a true moonshot whose mission was to crowdsource, or is to crowdsource clean the planet. To date, over 11 million pieces of litter have been picked up worldwide in more than 100 countries, with a massive amount of data collected, types of litter, materials, and brands. The data is being used to evaluate litter impact on the environment and even to inform initiatives like reduction of single-use plastics and adjusting taxes on tobacco in cities. Lastly, I'll mention my second round with will.i.am, where we built an Instagram-like app for a tech meets fashion line of expensive iPhone camera cases. I got a crash course in rapid manufacturing. My colleagues went from drafting hardware specs for multiple form factors to production in about 8 months. But more notably, it was a classic experience of launching something with zero product market fit, as in nobody bought them.
Next up was our 3.0 phase. And as you can see from the bubble, this is where we completely diverged. So I went into education. I started teaching part-time, and then I was hired full-time at Mission College. I teach graphic design courses right now at the beginning, middle, and capstone, from intro to graphic design, page layout, typography, agency and branding, portfolio. I host a small annual portfolio show similar to what I think you guys are doing with industry professionals and alumni, very similar to this event. I've also helped organize 3 hackathons where designers come with business and marketing students, come with coders, and collaborate into teams. I work with a range of students, anywhere from high school through high school graduates, pivoters, upskillers, people who come back to college, want to get certifications. During my first few years of teaching, as Dean had mentioned, I earned my MS in online education, which was at a very critical time. It was 1 year before the pandemic hit. So I became the faculty chair of the Distance Education Committee, and then I dragged and transitioned all the faculty with me into online teaching. All the work that we did, creating interactive projects that you saw, was a really good foundation for this new exploration into instructional design that I went into.
Meanwhile, I went in-house. Startups were great, fast-moving, plenty of accountability and responsibility, but it felt like a repeat loop after a while. I was missing out on leading teams more formally and working on products at a larger scale. So first up was Verizon. I was recruited to build and co-lead an innovation team developing internet services on top of the network. I oversaw product design and engineering on initiatives from mobile identity, security, media streaming, and then emerging technologies like smart home assistants and augmented reality. As you heard earlier, our charter was innovation, so I was very much had the privilege of co-authoring about 25 patents. Although our team was able to move fast, I did experience how glacially slow large corporations could move. We'd call it interfacing with the mothership, when we had to work with internal organizations like legal, finance, and even tech review committees. Next up was 23andMe, the personal genetics company, during its rise to popularity. When it was a pop cultural reference and dropped in song lyrics, if you all remember that. I was responsible there for building and leading the design, user research, and content practices. We developed entirely new ancestry and health features and collaborated on a lot of growth initiatives like increasing revenue and customer satisfaction. One thing to note here is most of the work we did fell under FDA regulation, so that was an entirely new process to understand, learn, and navigate. And most recently, I led 3 consumer-facing teams, design teams at LinkedIn. We completely overhauled your user profile. We launched a controversial but successful search results experience and implemented features for messaging like a focused inbox. I'll mention here that LinkedIn had the most mature design organization I've ever worked in, and it was the first time that I wasn't the highest ranking person responsible for design. There I reported to a VP. So before we move on, I just want to share a few behind the scenes photos of design thinking on the job. Yep, whiteboards and Post-it notes, everyone. Shots here of qualitative user research sessions, customer journey workshops, design sprints. Now, I prefer these in person, but we also did this, of course, remotely with distributed teams and apps like Miro and FigJam. One insight to share here is there's a lot of nuance and variability to how much of the design process you'll use on the job. It's definitely not one size fits all. You'll tailor what it looks like in practice depending on your team, your environment, and even the scope of a project.
Today, we're in our 4.0 phase. I don't know how many points this phase has. I continue to teach and develop new curriculum while Kevin is doing a number of other things. We've worked in just about every type of environment and engagement model. We've been talking together every day, and we're still connected.
Forever.
Connect us. Collectively, we've hired, managed, mentored, taught, and support the growth of designers, researchers, product managers, and even engineers. We've easily reviewed over 1,000 portfolios and interviewed hundreds of designers, which is why we decided to write a book. This is the Design Career Handbook. We just launched it this past August. It spans from learning about design to navigating a long career with our best advice and our tips. It includes interviews from different types of designers, from early career to high-level individual contributors, a few managers, directors, and even a senior design recruiter. Shout out to Eubin Williams, is she here?
Eubin!
She's currently studying industrial design here.
She's in our book, people.
That's our story up to today.
So the reason why we shared highlights from our careers is that we're constantly speculating about what's next, not just for us, but for design. As Jeanine said, we talk about it every day, not only with each other, but with colleagues, with friends, with people we mentor and teach. To be honest, nobody really knows, but we are realistic. We acknowledge that we are in a weird cycle, but it's always been a competitive field, and it's still exciting, and design is still critical. One thing's for sure, the only constant in life is
change.
Come on. Okay, we had to shout out to David Bowie. Okay, just in the last few years, we've all seen major shifts, right? So drastically different content consumption habits, rapid evolution of social media and influencer culture, the gig economy, remote work, and a faster churn of design trends, including retro, and what we say is about 6 definitions of ugly design. We see you, graphic designers. A resurgence of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs due to even more expansive tech advancements than we saw in the 90s. And of course, AI's impact on everything. Now, designers with many years of experience share that our careers were nonlinear and sometimes took unexpected turns. How many have seen this obligatory diagram. But we did always lean on our design fundamentals and design thinking, but we were also evolving every few years. New domains, new skills, new software, new frameworks, new team models, new goals. So what we really want to impress upon you is the idea of continuous reinvention, which is enabled from continuous learning. So pay attention to trends and embrace the pivots, the zigs, the zags, and the spirit of exploration more than ever. Speaking of pivot, let's briefly touch on the job market. So, of course, right? There's a lot of frustration online, LinkedIn, Reddit, Discord, Substack, Slack, Medium. We're not gonna lie, as we said, it is tough out there. There are many new designers in the field, spikes pre-pandemic, during, and since, not just from university and college programs, but also the many boot camps that overpromised. Lots of companies overhired. There are still layoffs happening. It is taking longer to land a job. Just a little side note, these are just the 2 panels of a 6-panel cartoon by Casey Green that I recommend you check out. It's really a personal backstory by the artist.
There is some good news. There is a gradual bounce back in the market to pre-pandemic levels, and there is some optimism for 2025. I know this is small, but these statistics from a tech industry survey indicate that we had about an 18% growth last year. It's not huge, but there's also a decline for remote jobs. Companies are figuring out what works best for their businesses. And there is a large amount of jobs at entry and mid-level that you can see here. The takeaway is for you to pay attention to the market and industry news and trends, so you can be proactive rather than reactive to these shifts that are happening.
So I do talk, as a mentor, I do talk to job seekers every week and also catch up with design recruiters, both in-house and from recruiting agencies that focus on design. As you saw, there are jobs out there and recruiters are optimistic for 2025 hiring, but they do agree, and this is like, sorry to say this platitude, but it is as important as ever to stand out.
So let's get to tactics for the job search and how you can position yourself. First, be open to everything. Different types of companies, different sizes of companies, different sectors and industries, even different modalities. Go broad in your design search, in your job search, excuse me. Maybe not government right now, but every organization needs creativity and innovation and human-centered mindsets. So you're going to build experience wherever you work. We're gonna get into a speed round now of the practical stuff. Get ready to take those notes. Okay, 1, networking. We cannot stress this enough, and this is a perfect event for this. Networking is an ongoing practice. It's not only for when you are job searching. Consider informational seeking. Reach out to people and ask for a short chat, like 15 minutes. When you ask, give a specific topic, ideally something that they've worked on or that they shared. Maybe go beyond saying that you just want to learn more about their company. For example, you might thank a person for something that they posted or something they wrote or they talked about in a podcast. Recruiters often notice if you appear to be active online and you're engaged in the community, it helps to be seen online. We get that not everyone wants to be a content creator. Totally get that. But you can start, actually I want to say, you can start by making an account and then you start by lurking. You know you want to lurk. And then you start liking posts and then you start adding your opinions and your thoughts and your advice and your support. So you can start small. Think of networking as an investment and as it being non-transactional. Of course, it is social capital for the future when you need to do something. Like a referral. Survey data indicates as much as 30 to 40% of confirmed hires they come from referrals. So if you have strong connections, you can 1, ask for a referral. 2, you could be recommended by that connection. And 3, you might even hear about jobs before they're publicly posted.
So I always tell people to be friendly with recruiters, even if you get a rejection. Connect with them on LinkedIn. They're great people to stay in contact with because they also move from company to company. A recent job seeker just told me that they were friendly with the recruiter, and even though it got turned down for a particular job, that recruiter really vibed with them and recommended them for another role at their company. And this is actually pretty common. So recruiters are your friends, even though they're getting a bad rap these days.
Number 2, internships. The reality is that there are very few of them out there. But a majority of them are over the summer, but they get filled in the fall and winter before. Although sometimes there are some rare companies that might offer an internship at any time. Even after graduation, that could be your foot in the door with a company. Let people in your network know that you are looking and that you can add seeking internship to your LinkedIn profile in the header, in the headline. If you make a connection with someone in a company that you're interested in, you can even ask or propose with them to be an intern. The not so secret reality is that internships are a significant differentiator. They can fulfill that 1 to 3 years of experience that the entry-level roles are asking for. And number 3, set job alerts. These could be on platforms like LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, and then experiment with your criteria, what you're looking for, what location, hybrid or remote, different industries, different size companies, and especially different job titles. Save yourself time and sanity. Focus on roles that are solid matches with your experience instead of mass applying to hundreds of jobs. But do apply if you believe that you are mostly qualified. Research indicates that women are less likely to apply to jobs than men, and they apply up to 20% less jobs if they don't think that they're qualified. Lastly, apply early. Best chances of getting reviewed before that queue gets really deep.
Just last week, there was a screenshot going around of a job post that had over 50 applicants already within 2 minutes of being posted. Kind of crazy. So this apply early is a legit tip. There's a little bit of debate about, of course, I'm a LinkedIn fan and was before even I worked there. There's the easy apply on there. But there's a mixed opinion about whether you should also consider applying directly at job seekers, companies' job portals. So you should definitely consider that as well. Okay, number 4, interviewing. Of course, there's different types of interviews. The most common is behavioral interviews. Typical questions like, tell me a project you were proud of, tell me a time where you had a conflict, a time where you took initiative, or specific design, sometimes like what inspires you. Of course, technical interviews tend to be more specific about your area of design, tools and processes, and even analysis of like a product or a service. Thankfully, the term culture fit has been replaced with culture add, and it's essentially, do you bring something fresh to the team or the organization? Would they want to work with you? Now, these next few bullets are all about doing your research about the company, the specific role, and common interview questions. The main thing here is to be prepared. Write out all of your responses. They're out there. All these common questions for interviewing are out there. So write out your responses. A great framework to outline your answers in advance is the STAR method, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. There's a lot of acronyms, but this is a really good one. Our advice is you can get like a tight, 3 to 4 minute response to a question if you sort of follow that framework or have it in mind. Of course, you should practice your conversations in your interviews out loud. You'll hear what flows well and what is clunky. And the last bullet is our favorite tip, and it's about developing what we call your story bank. When you are having those network conversations, take note of the stories that people find interesting. Those are the ones to add to your personal story bank. They'll be your go-tos, anecdotes when to either artfully pivot to when you have the need, or when you get sprung with a question that maybe is not at the top of your list. Number 5, design challenges. Now, I know this is different for different areas of design. This tends to be more common in UX design and strategic roles. Now, historically, some companies have used these optionally, or some companies always use them. Regardless, they do seem to be on the rise. There are various types. There's take-home exercises, whiteboard challenges, and even app or product critiques, as I mentioned. Now, they are very controversial. The first point is, it is a pretty reasonable argument that as a designer, you should be able to be evaluated by your portfolio. The second point is, even with guidance on how much time to spend, which can range from like, spend only 2 to 4 hours or no more than 6 hours, there will always be other candidates that spend more time. The third point is, they are almost never compensated. And the fourth, the most controversial in my opinion, and the one that bothers me the most, is if a company gives an exercise about their product or service or even in their industry. Now, I will add here that, there's always this concern, oh, they're gonna steal my idea. I promise you, like 99% of the time, an internal company, especially if it's a larger company, they probably have explored these ideas in the past, but ultimately, you decide if you're willing to do them. Now, why are they used? Maybe a hiring manager, this is my case, I have used design exercises once or twice ever. I have more commonly done whiteboard challenges, but in a very interactive, collaborative way, more like, hey, how would we work together? But basically, it's a hiring manager maybe looking for something that they didn't see in your portfolio. But these days, especially as I said, it's on the rise, it's more likely just to trim down candidates, like only look at those that are willing to do them. Or, comparing the quality of work from 2 candidates with something more specific like the same challenge. The last point here is, if you do a design challenge and you're proud of the work that you did, you can consider repackaging it as a case study in your portfolio, because I know that's sometimes light for students. Okay, portfolio presentations. The first thing to really emphasize here is designers present a lot on the job. So when we're hiring, it is common to expect an actual slide presentation. If you aren't clear when you're interviewing, ask. Don't assume that you can just walk through your online portfolio or send a PDF. Now, of course, a presentation is an incredible opportunity to tell the story of you, show your personality, your point of view, and your decision-making influences. Now, naturally, case studies in your portfolio and your presentation have to be concise and memorable. We have more tips on this coming up. Of course, you're going to use all of the storytelling skills, solid structures, beginning, middle, end, varying your pace, strategic pauses, and eye contact with the audience. And we like to say, we really like to overemphasize, add a little drama. That's what makes stories interesting. It'll make your case studies interesting and your presentations as well. The last bullet is also one that we're particularly excited about. We always tell people to save some surprises for a live presentation. Hold back a few of those great nuggets from your online portfolio to reveal when you're presenting. So continuing on, what do hiring managers look for? The first is passion. I know it's another cliche word, forgive us, but seriously, for design and more specifically for the role you're applying to. Again, be prepared with deep questions about the team, about growth opportunities, about expectations, but not just the benefits that you get out of the role. Really dig deep and ask questions about the company, its mission, its health, the team. What's the structure like? What's it like working with cross-functional partners? It really just shows you've done your homework and you're excited about the opportunity. The second, of course, is skills, of course. Foundations, design thinking, design sense. Do you articulate why? Of course, hard skills, and if you have gaps. So one tip here is that, again, be really diligent in reviewing job requirements. Know how your experience stacks up. This allows you to be prepared to address any areas that you're light on. You can talk about how you're actively leveling up. You're practicing, you're studying, you're taking a course. You have some side projects. The last one here, number 3, is energy. Now, this can be controversial. There's a bias, of course. The dean had the comment earlier. Yes, extroverts are favored over introverts. It's just true, but we're all human. And recruiters and hiring managers are more enthusiastic.
That's a reminder.
Yeah, reminder. We have a talk right now. When you're excited, alert, engaged, and comfortable and confident, they're more excited to continue on in the process. Speaking of, this introvert, you probably have already heard of this. I talk to designers all the time. We talk about this topic. We often recommend the book Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. Definitely worth checking that book out or her TED Talk. Okay, how are you evaluated when you are interviewing? So, in the interview process, typically there is an interview rubric. It's usually based on a company's internal career ladder, and of course covers everything from your design and the related hard skills. Again, design thinking, visual design, storytelling, technical proficiency, and of course soft skills, communication, collaboration, taking initiatives. Sometimes companies use a rating scale based on their own corporate values. So this is another really good thing to research. A couple examples from my past are customer obsessed. Are you user focused? Think big. How much of an innovator are you? Or we go far together. Basically, how much do what is your collaboration skills like? Ultimately, they're trying to figure out if you're a match for the role. If it's a yes, of course, you advance in the process or an offer is extended. But if it's a no, best case scenario is they thank you for your application, tell you that they're moving on to other applicants or candidates. It might be helpful to know that decision-making has a couple different modes. It can be by a panel consensus. So if you're interviewing with several people, they can decide, by committee. In that area, by the way, sometimes if there's a single red flag or something that somebody doesn't like, it can take your whole candidacy. It's kind of an obvious tip here, but you want to show up for every single person you're interviewing with. And sometimes a hiring decision can be overruled by the hiring manager either way, either to continue you on or to drop you out of the process. Now, of course, hirers have the advantage today. There's just an abundant amount of candidates. They are your competition. And they can often wait for the perfect candidate. So we just say you have to have that perseverance or that grit. And also just remember, it may not be you, it's not you. It may not be a reflection of your skills or your ability or enthusiasm. You just may not be the right fit for what they're looking for. So we also say, stay sane. If you don't get traction, take a step back. Again, we're designers, we evaluate, we know how to do research. Think about what went well, what could have gone better, and try different tactics next time.
Okay, let's get back to things that you do control. In our book, we refer to your resume and portfolio and profile as your marketing kit. Its goal is to get you in the recruiter's contact pile. At each step of the recruiting process, your aim is to get them interested to learn more about you. Here's a few things that can help. Consider your kit items, your resume, your professional profile and portfolio as complementary. All of the information should be aligned, technical details, experience, dates, etc. But each item has a targeted sub-purpose. The resume, all business, data parsed by ATS. Who knows what ATS is? Application tracking system, the stuff that is looking and parsing your content from your resume out. Your profile expresses more detail with hints of your personality, and your portfolio is your full narrative. Click. Oh, sorry. What we're going for is a Goldilocks principle, that, the three bears fairy tale. So not too much and not too little, but just right. This is unique and variable to everyone, from your resume to your portfolio and even to your case study. So it's not something that we could say from person to person. It needs to be exactly the same. Progressive disclosure. This is a UX design pattern term, if anybody recognizes it. Reviewers should learn something new progressively. So from your resume to your profile to your portfolio. So you're letting them know a little bit more, a little different each time. Ultimately, they should be intrigued and want to advance you to a live interview or a portfolio presentation. Think about how you feel when you binge watch a show, maybe, or you read a great book. You want to know what happens next.
Okay, the heart of your portfolio, of course, are case studies. And so here are a few tips. So first, to start off, everyone is over the cookie cutter case study template. Recruiters are reviewing batches of dozens to hundreds of portfolios for a role. They will literally move on from portfolio within seconds. I mean, a high estimate is like skimming in 30 to 60 seconds, which is actually a little bit better. Humans that look at a resume, it's about 10 seconds. So of course, the first common tip that you'll hear a lot and see a lot out there is optimize for scanning. No one reads entire case studies. maybe until if you get further in the review process. So of course, all the common tips that you're seeing out there, we'll just reiterate here. Summaries at the top, so TLDRs, bold headlines and callouts, avoiding dense blocks of text, and balancing with visuals. So graphic designers tend to be a little bit better about case studies, even though UX product designers do more of them. Hierarchy. The second is, we call it focusing on the why, from the known goals of the project to clear reasoning of hypotheses. This is what people are actually looking in those little bits there. What problem were you solving? What opportunity were you capitalizing on? What drove your project and its progression? And for who? Specific personas or user segments or customers. Even though those sound very cliche, but they do paint that story. Be outcome oriented. Include specific business goals or metrics. It shows that you're thinking about the impact beyond just the user value. And of course, we are human-centered, we are user-centered, but it's really important today more than ever. A lot of hiring is about execution and outcomes. This next bullet we call main takeaways. So we feel that each case study should have a main point or anecdote that you want viewers to remember. That's the key to you thinking about your case studies in totality. Ideally, the main takeaways from case study to case study are unique because they'll collectively paint an impression of you and your well-roundedness. Now, they can highlight a particular strength you have or focus on a specific, something that happened specifically for the project. Personally, we like to look for those in what we call the messy middle, which is mostly around collaboration. So like a cross-functional debate or negotiation, or a breakthrough or surprise insight that drove a design decision. This next bullet, or highlight here, is less than perfect. So it's our tendency to describe how each project went swimmingly. In UX, we call that the happy path. Of course, in the real world, few projects go perfectly, so we think it's okay to reflect that. It is common for us to see a learning section at the bottom of case studies, but we challenge you to integrate that more in context, how you creatively overcame them, and those are the highlights, those are the call-outs, that's storytelling. This last one is about variance. So similar to the past point, we don't practice the complete design process for every project. So it's reasonable that your case studies don't have to have the same structure. There are constraints. It could be schedule or inability to do research or working within brand or within a design system. Of course, project scopes vary. For example, in product design, you may work on incremental features, or you might work on a complete new category. In graphic design, you might develop a piece for a single event or a multi-channel seasonal marketing campaign. So this is a little bit of a visual of what we mean. If you have a variety of building blocks in each of your case studies, they'll have different structures and lengths, and they won't blend into each other as a reviewer goes from 1 to 2 to 3. I promise you, even my eyes glaze over. If I get to a second or third case study and they all look the same, I literally already forgot what the first one was about. If you follow some of these ideas or play with them, your case studies might just be more interesting to review and, best case, more memorable. Now, let's talk a little bit about how to position yourself. There's no right or wrong in the following couple slides. It all depends on the job you're applying to and your personal goals. This terminology is a little bit dated now, but we still use it. And the first is a generalist. Now, it's often expected that designers early in career will present themselves as generalists. That's totally fine. It shows that you have experience with the stages of the design process. It signals being flexible and having a growth mindset, which are two traits that hirers do look for. Specialists, of course, can stand out if the hirer knows what they're looking for. They might be looking for a candidate with a very specific skill or experience to fill a gap in their team. The last is, again, how many people are familiar with this terminology? Oh, okay, just some, okay. So generalist, specialist, and you imagine those two things coming together, we call it a T-shaped designer. Basically, you kind of get the whole process, but then you start to specialize in an area. This is where most designers naturally end up after building some experience. Now, this is definitely a question. How many have heard of a full stack designer? Okay, just a few. So this term, we kind of co-opted, it's a bit newer, I mean, it's a handful of years now, but we kind of co-opted it from full stack engineer, where honestly it made more sense for what it meant, which is why it's a little bit confusing for designers. We most commonly hear it used in one of two ways. The first is to imply that you have experience on end-to-end, or sometimes people say 0 to 1 projects. Basically, you're a generalist, but you have more work evidence that you've executed all stages, perhaps having shipped some products or launched some projects. The second is to project that you have strong tactical hands-on skills. Sometimes that's design and research, but more often people take this as design and coding. So one takeaway here is that most job listings you're going to start reading are very generic or unrealistically list every skill and responsibility. So first, remember what we said earlier, apply anyway if you feel mostly qualified. But we always suggest when you make contact, ask the recruiter or hiring manager as much as you can about the specific needs or expectations. Are they looking for specific capabilities? Was there something in your portfolio specifically, your experience, that was attractive to them? This will help you kind of tailor how you present yourself and your work. Now let me go back really quickly to specialists for a minute. There's nothing wrong with leaning into an area of interest or strength, presenting yourself as an expert. It shows that you're driven to excel in that specific area, or signals that you're looking for a role with those specific responsibilities. Now, again, a little side note here, it may affect the time it takes you to land the right job, but again, these are choices that you can proactively be aware of and make. If you can see this long list here, these examples are mostly skill-based titles, but you can also present yourself as a specialist, of course, in an industry like automotive, industrial equipment, consumer hardware, entertainment, financial health, etc. Okay, keep rolling here. So let's visit the design process. Ta-da, this circular diagram should be very familiar to you, including iterative loops. Sometimes it's represented linearly or with different words like empathize and prototype. This is essentially the execution flow of the design thinking or human-centered design practice. You'll use some version of this on your own or with a team. One I've used a bunch is called the double diamond. This was codified by the British Design Council in 2005. It has more structure and divides research and design into phases. Now, I'd like to point out two things, not specifically about this diagram, but reiterating what I said earlier, there's variability to how much of the design process you use. Frameworks and processes, they're not set in stone, and there are many of them. The previous circular design process, this double diamond, there's even a triple diamond. One of my favorites is called Jobs to be Done framework. And some of these loosely map to product engineering and even business-centric frameworks, like the business model canvas or the lean canvas or agile or product market fit, blue ocean strategy, shape up, DHM. Somewhere you work may adopt a particular framework or development flow or combine, adapt, or remix. They may even vary across projects or teams. My second point is more of a hot take, and that is the first rule of design process is you do not talk about design process. Raise your hand if you get this reference. No chuckles, but at least a couple people. Fight Club, yes. Okay, so of course, we still evangelize for the user and follow our processes, involve our collaborators in research, workshops, and sprints. You'll share insights and data and how they inform your design decisions, especially in job interviews and on the job presentations. But you must balance your design narratives with outcomes, as I said earlier, focusing on the outcomes. Ultimately, what was achieved, possibly at each stage, what was the impact or the metric of your work? Now here's another anecdote. I had a mentor session very recently with a principal level designer who is interviewing, and he told me that he's passing the design interviews, but then he's not passing on, he's getting dropped off at cross-functional PM interviews. And we talked about this, and he had this just blank look on his face, and he's like, oh my gosh, he realized he was losing the attention of those partners because he was just talking about the design process, not about working cross-functionally, not about outcomes, et cetera. He's now working on tailoring his narratives, and I'm actually waiting to hear back from him on how things are going. Okay, I won't read this list, and sorry for people in the back, or maybe I'll just read the highlights. Knowing how design connects to business is more critical than ever. So this list here is, the highlights are business models, value capture, goals and metrics, and getting invested in the roadmap. Now, this list is most often driven and owned by product or project managers, account executives, even operations. Usually the MBA's on the team. That is a little bit of a dig. But it is very advantageous for you to have an entrepreneurial mindset and to be familiar with these. This knowledge will help you participate in strategy, determining trade-offs and prioritizing, and ultimately understanding the impact of the work that you do. Now, we do think that students are getting more exposure to this in design school today, so that's really great. So we're just kind of doubling down on that for you.
We'd be remiss not to point out the core set of soft skills that you still need to carry with you throughout your career. So the first one, curiosity. This is a top designer trait. Be curious. Observe everything around you. Ask questions. Develop hypotheses. That's such a hard word for a talk. 2, communication. You need to be direct, confident in email, in conversations, in documentation, in your presentations. And I also added, stay positive. Collaboration. This is all about a healthy debate, knowing when to negotiate, compromise, and your day-to-day, every day-to-day interactions. Storytelling. That is concise, planned, not rambling. Informative and compelling presentations, meetings, discussions, interviews. So that goes back to planning it out. Think about what you want to say. Think about what your anecdotes are and connections you have. Leadership. You can be a leader at any level, and it starts with taking initiative and inspiring others. You often hear that storytelling is a superpower, which is why we want to double down on it. You must get really, really good at it. But how do you do that? Reading more. Fiction, nonfiction, articles, opinions, case studies. Pay attention to speakers and conferences and webinars. Watch TED Talks. By design, they are examples of masterful storytelling. And you need to practice. Every time you tell a good story is an opportunity for you to inform, inspire, and most importantly, influence.
That's a wrap. Thank you.